Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I am thrilled to introduce a truly remarkable guest, Dr. Sweta Adatia, a leading neurologist and global voice in brain health. With a deep understanding of dementia and neurodegenerative conditions, Dr. Aradia combines cutting edge neuroscience with spirituality, wisdom, and holistic practices to help individuals protect and optimize their brain. Dr. Sweta Aradia, it's an honor to have you with us here today. Welcome to the MedBricks podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajitha, for having me here. Thank you. What a delight to talk to all the people across the globe. Thank you to the technology that we are doing this.
Yes, it's an honor, and you spending your time to spread all the knowledge and wisdom, the number of hours you have worked in your lab. So that being said, Dr. Aradia, dementia is a condition that deeply affects not only the memory but also the identity and connection. From your perspective, as both a neurologist and a practitioner of holistic and spiritual approaches, how can we begin to protect the brain and the soul before the symptoms even appear?
Lovely. Thank you for asking that question. And good evening, good morning to wherever the people are as well. See, dementia, we talk about it. That means the brain is broken because that's what I joke and I say I'm a brain plumber. People come to me when things are broken, but that's a very, very boring day job for me. Do you know what is a job? Job. Just overbroke. So what really is exciting and intriguing is to preserve the brain. Now, if we look at the memory functions, the by the time the dementia is diagnosed, already the and pretty much a good part of the brain is lost. Every decade after the age of 40, there is shrinking of 5% of the brain. So the brain is already shrinking in size. Now that is our job to sort of make it, like a plateau or make it stalled. Otherwise, the curve is going down. So by the time the dementia gets diagnosed, it's pretty late. So our job is to stop that progression of the degeneration. That's number one. Now, number two is you very well said that it's not just loss of memory. Memory is one of the components of dementia. Basically, you lose also judgment, orientation, your self identity, who you are, your social connections, all the visual functions that you can do, problem solving. All of this is part of the dementia. So, dementia is much, much more than what we understand as memory. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it is just heartbreaking when we see our loved ones in that state.
Yes. Last week, Rajita, I was literally, I stood up from my chair. I had this patient who was 49 years old with a suspected Alzheimer's dementia. Now, I just learned to become a medical doctor, let's say some 20, 22 years back. We used to say, oh, dementia will happen after the age of 75 and 80. And we can always, in our exams, we would say, let's not read about it. Who cares, if we don't answer a couple of questions. But now look at the rapidness of the problem that we are seeing. So a 49-year-old with a suspected Alzheimer's dementia, I was like, what is going on? So this is what we need to start to educate people. And I'm so happy that you guys are bringing out such topics, because we really have to talk about, we talk a lot about the bank balances, but we never talk about the brain balances. So we really have to talk about the cognitive currency and the brain balance that we need to preserve, all of us, irrespective of the age.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And as we are digging into research on this, research shows that women are at significantly higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. Nearly two-thirds of those diagnosed are women. So,
Yes.
what is it about that female brain during menopause that makes it more vulnerable to dementia?
Right. Thank you for asking that question. See, overall, if you look at the progression of Alzheimer's dementia, the percentage is definitely on the rise. The coming 2 decades, we are going to see a 1700% spike in the cases of Alzheimer's dementia. It is going to be a massive number. Now, the good news is that yes, now we have diagnostic modalities. And the good news is we have all the PET scans and the MRIs and the blood markers and the EEG markers, so many markers for an early diagnosis. And the good thing is there's a lot of awareness right now. So irrespective of men or women, everybody is part of the game, and
Mhm.
nobody is spared, because that is how the brain is behaving. And the number of the toxins that we are living with, look at the exposure to digital devices, pollution, the diet that we take, the stress, the biggest, the biggest thing which is happening in our lives. All of that is contributory. Genetics, yes, of course, there is a way in which the brain is clearing the toxins. Now, why does dementia happen? Because it is the accumulation of the toxins in the brain, amyloid and tau. So it is essentially eating the brain up. Now, let's say I live in Dubai. So if I get up in the morning and go for my work, the entire road will be nice and clean. The entire thing is ready for me because the municipality worked all night and made it happen. The exact same way, there is a cleaning process in the brain which is happening, but that is happening at night. So, as we are going to sleep, the entire sweeping with a glymphatic system of all this amyloid and tau is happening. Now, that is happening similar for man and women. There's no change, there's no difference. The exact same process of cleansing, depositing, everything is the same. But what is so different about women is its hormonal play. So
Mhm.
estrogen is the key thing which makes woman a woman, right? Now, estrogen is not just a hormone. It is essentially a super important ingredient for the cognitive function, for the prefrontal cortex, for the function of amygdala, for the function of hippocampus. Now, for all people, we'll just simplify it. Hippocampus is nothing but a small relay station. Whatever you say right now to me, I will register my memory temporarily because of hippocampus. And then I'll push back the memory if I want to remember into the cortical structures, which is how the long term memory and the short term memory is formed. And amygdala is like a little small, tiny almond like structure which is responsible for emotions. And the most important part is the prefrontal cortex. In humans we have about 40 to 42% of the prefrontal cortex only doing executive tasks.
Mhm.
What is right, what is wrong, do I navigate here, how do I make choice, how do I remember, the way I communicate, the way I relate things, everything is all about that prefrontal cortex. Now, for women, the interesting thing is estrogen is a key component of these structures. So Dr. Lisa did a very nice and interesting study. There's also a book called Menopause Brain, right? I think it's Wales Cornell School of Medicine. So what she found was very interesting. When they did an estrogen PET scan, so when they put a ligand and then they scan the brains in the big scanners, what she found was there was a rapid increase in the number of the estrogen receptors, which means the body is now understanding that my estrogen is low, 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 and let me adapt so that I can work from the perspective of the functions in the brain through these advanced receptors. So for women, I believe that it is the play and entire this of the menopause and the perimenopause, which is leading to women specifically being at high risk for dementia.
Yeah,
Now,
the Dr. Lisa Mosconi has done a wonderful job
oh,
studying on
yes,
women's brain.
that's right.
How she says brain is estrogen hungry. Um,
That's right. It's just looking for it because obviously these pivotal functions have to happen. But the interesting thing also is that the way women, the changes, other changes which are happening in a woman's life, right, around the perimenopause or menopause, what is really happening is essentially the estrogen is not just for the brain, right? The bone health, important for mood, important for general well-being, health. So there is a deterioration in a lot of other factors also which is happening. And hence right now the scientific community is into this thing. Should we start talking about estrogen replacement to protect the brain function way early, because we know that these receptor changes are happening well in advance of a menopause. So around the perimenopausal age, what can we do in relation to that? And if we look at a woman's life during this time also, obviously she's at the peak of, so many things are happening. There's family, there's so much of pressure in terms of the work, there's so many social changes also which is contributing into this entire equation.
Yeah. So, you have brought up a good point about, scientific community looking at, should we start replacing earlier enough the estrogen? So, is just taking the replacement good enough, or do we also need to make some type of a lifestyle modifications?
Oh, I'm a huge fan of everything natural because I believe in this entire thing of integrative sciences, because it is never about, one size fits all or one pill fixes everything. It is never about it. And in fact, as far as possible, if we try to understand the formula is, yes, estrogen is going away. What are the supplements? There's something called the phytoestrogen, which almost behaves like estrogen. Where is the phytoestrogen present? And we start to optimize the diet in that way. As I was just mentioning, sleep, right? In that 8 hours average, I'm just talking of an average sleep. Look at the number of the release of these amyloid and tau and the cleaning which is happening. Sleep is quintessential. Very important to have social connections and off digital screens for some time. I think the digital dementia is also going to be a big problem in the coming decade. Now, what really happens is when you're consuming these continuous digital devices, there is an idling rhythm which is forming in the brain. The brain is not getting enough modulation. When I think, I should produce a fast rhythm called beta. When I close my eyes, I should produce something called alpha. Just before going to sleep, there should be theta. And when I go to sleep, there should be delta, the slowest rhythm. Now, when I'm looking at a screen continuously, there's only one single rhythm which is firing. And that is also one of the responsible factors contributing to shrinking of the brain. So very soon we will have also, and I think one of our etiologies, until date we do not have enough evidence, but I'm very confident that as the evidence is building up, we will have a significant contribution from the improper use of screen. I mean, we will need the screens definitely, but are we interacting with it? Are we consuming it, or we are creating something out of it? This will be the question which we will have to answer. The lifestyle in general, right? In terms of exercise, in terms of the maintenance of the bone health, as we were talking about, in terms of the regular participation in interactive puzzles or something where you're keeping your brain alive. All this is extremely important for preservation of the brain cells.
Thank you so much for that. I know you have brought up sleep a couple times already in our conversation. Sleep, which is neglected by most of them. They say, oh, I don't need 8 hours. I don't need this many hours. I can sleep for 2 hours and can function fine. In that process, as you have mentioned, that, accumulation of the amyloid and all that, without that deep sleep and constantly being glued to the phone as you're sleeping and as you're waking up.
Yeah.
And people say, okay, that's where I'm getting my news. I'm, gaining knowledge from that. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sleep is a repair. It's a nurse. You are a nurse. Sleep nurse is such an important component. Only doctors would not have healed the society at all. It is the important element that a nurse plays. So sleep behaves like a nurse. Now, 8 hours is complete ballpark average. As you grow older, your need for the sleep reduces. When you are younger, you need to repair more, so your sleep is more. It is not really the quantity as much. It is also the quality. Are you sleeping the time when the melatonin is just on the ballpark rise? Most of the times, the melatonin rise starts around 10 to 10:45 p.m. at night, and then sort of peaks around 2 to 3 o'clock and then drops. Now, what we do is we often bypass those peaks. So we sleep much later than 2 a.m. when already the melatonin is gone, plus the blue light, which is kicking in, which is just completely abolishing the effect of melatonin. So that is where we are sabotaging the entire physiological phenomenon of sleep. The way the sleep works is the first few hours you need very deep sleep called non-REM. And the last few hours you need something called the REM, which is rapid eye movement. So when you cycle between REM and non-REM, REM and non-REM, that is what we call as the efficient sleep. So you need to spend some time really sleeping deep and sometimes in the superficial. Unless we do that, that is a problem. Now, yes, a lot of people have insomnia, which is genetic. which means they just cannot fall asleep. There is a switch in the brain. Literally, the RAS, the reticular activating system, acts like a switch. When it's time out, it's switch off, and then you go to sleep. But for some people, this is not possible. And these are exceptions. But for largely the people where it is not affected, it is all trainable. You talk about anything in the body, it's a rhythm. Anything can be trained. And the moment we are out of that rhythm, that is when dis-ease comes in. It is just dis-ease. You have just moved out of your ease and comfort, right? So this mental rhythm, the biological rhythm, the circadian rhythm, the biological clock that we talk about is extremely important for us to follow. Now, entire world and the globe has sort of, upside down clocks right now as we talk, right? I mean, people sleep late in the night, wake up early in the morning. There's some shift workers. There are people who are working across boundaries. I see a lot of youngsters working across for North America, living in the Asian part of the world. So all this is also contributory. Now, I'm not anti screens totally, as you said. We learn. This is the way how we communicate, how we reach out to each other, right? But are you learning or are you only consuming? This is a major, major, major factor. Now, when we are just doom scrolling, that's why it's called a doom scrolling, right? And Oxford has come up with a thing called brain rot. There's a new word which is introduced, right? So when you're continuously scrolling, 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 and that idling rhythm is happening, everything goes shut. Everything feels that there's no need for me to work. So use it or lose it. It's a very, very simple thing, right? So the smart way is time box. That is the best way to do it. Okay, these 20 minutes, I have a little clock out there. It's like also a Pomodoro technique of focus and attention. All right, from 8 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. is my brain out. Let me just binge on any of the Instagram reels or TikTok reels or whatever I want to. Let it go loose. It's an idling rhythm. Perfectly fine. But the moment the clock alarm hits at 8:30, I come out of it and then I again start to work on something creative. So if you don't do that, then there is this, it's like a zombie, what we say. Why? Because you just get consumed into that process. So it's very important to be mindful eating, mindful sleeping, mindful use of technologies. And if we want to give a little acronym, we can say BRAIN, right? So your B is for your perfect, also breathing, because I'm a huge, huge fan of breathing well, because we don't breathe well, right? And then R is restoration, repair processes. What are you doing? And then A is for what are you doing in terms of alternative practices to keep yourself healthy. And then I is what are the ways in which intellectually you're stimulating yourself, and this forms a part of intellectual stimulation. And then N is very, very, very important. How are you nurturing the social connections? There is a study which has come, and very, very disturbing study, that the major reason currently that US or North America is facing a lot of dementia, one of the pivotal factors being considered is social isolation. People are not talking to each other. We have millions of friends on the virtual network, but there is no real connection. And that is very important for the brain.
Yes, because a lot of them communication is through texting. It's so different versus picking up the phone and listening to that voice, having that conversation. And recently, I've heard they are coming out with AI devices for this loneliness, who
Mhm.
is an AI companion. So how is that? Is that really replace a human communication?
I'm laughing, and I'm smiling because two reasons. Because I'm just an advisor to a startup called Neosati. And the very first time that they came and said, "This is your AI friend," I said, "I need a real friend. I don't need an AI friend. Why should I need a AI friend?" But then, when I went deeper into it, the way the founder was explaining to me was very interesting. The founder said that, look, a time we live in where nobody has time for each other. It's all everybody is busy in their own lives. Is there somebody true and genuine to take care? I said, yeah, possibly that's one of the considerations. So this AI, you keep talking to this AI, and then you keep interacting. This AI learns a lot about you, becomes like your friend, and then nudges you, let's say, into the right practices, nudges you into caring for your food or for your stuff that you're doing. So I said, that's interesting. And in fact, there will be a time when this will be required for sure, there's no question about it. But we have to again come back to an important point. I was talking to him about the exact same thing. Where is empathy? Where is compassion? Where is care? So yes, we are trying to instill all of that into it. And the most important is emotional modulation. So we did a small little experiment. I asked the robot to ask me the questions as though I'm interviewing a robot. And then there was a real person asking me the questions. And then we were monitoring the brain waves and seeing what is happening when it was a humanoid robot, good looking, like, a proper robotic function through an AI, and then a human. Now, the questions were almost similar, but I was getting stuck when I was speaking to a robot. And while I was very fluidly explaining to the same thing to a real person, and then, the brain changes. Of course, I was stressed as I was speaking to the robot. I was not stressed as I was talking to the human. And then I was wondering, why is this happening? The real reason is because I am reading, as right now also you're listening. I'm actually seeing your emotions, your emotional expressions. The
Okay.
modulation is going on in my brain. My brain is trying to figure out, hey, is she understanding this? Do I need to make it simpler? Do I need to make it complex? All this is happening behind the scene. Now, for a robot, there is some limitation to have all the emotional modulation.
Yeah.
That is the power of us being human, right? But eventually, I think AI is part of our life. There is no shying away from it. It's only the way in which we will be able to use it for our good. In fact, I keep reading these stories, right? I just sent to chat gpt my problems, and then chat gpt came up with a diagnosis. X number of doctors were not able to diagnose it, and this is great, right? Because here now you have a nice little hired brain which is giving you a support, additional support intellectually, but the empathetic connections, the social part of it will not go away. It's not going to be ever diminishing, at least for a few millions of years in the evolution process.
Yeah, we still need that human connection
We do.
with one another. Yeah. So, with women in their 40s and 50s, how can they start protecting their brain early enough prior to
Yeah.
even getting to that stages? What are some of the things that they can do?
So I'm going to say something which a lot of people will be surprised that I'm saying such a simple thing. I think the very first thing is, let's stop thinking about, as women, and including me, that we are going to be 40 and 50 and 60. The very first command is, look, I'm young at heart. Age really does not matter, because what you speak to your brain, there's psycho, neuro, physio, immuno, endocrinology, right? The way in which you're talking to the mind, talking to your brain, is influencing every single cell. So very simple, experiment. When you make people stand, and then you make them say yes, and people can try if they are right here listening to us. Just keep saying yes, 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 and you will see that you stoop forwards. And then you ask them to say no, 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 no. Automatically, your posture stoops backwards. So there is this, sort of a already existing subliminal processing of the mind influencing the body. Now, by the age of 40, if I start thinking of menopause and perimenopause and read all the under the sun and moon, and with Google and Chat GPT, okay, I'm preparing for menopause, and then I start thinking of all the hot flushes and the hormonal changes and the mood changes and the sleep issues and the memory, etc., and all, I will invite that. So my first advice to anybody is, it is not a crisis of life, it is a celebration of life.
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah.
the first thing that you tell yourself. The second thing is an entire menopause brain work of Dr. Lisa, and I have read it thoroughly, and every single article what was published by that group. Very interesting that there is a curve which is inverted. So yes, there is a drop of the brain function and the cognitive reserve, but there is also a sharp rise which is happening after a few years. So you do become wise eventually. So I would rather say that let's celebrate that wisdom right from the start. So my very first thing is what you're talking to the brain. The second thing is, yes, you need to take care of all the stressors. The stressors can be long working hours, or not taking a break, not having enough sleep, not having enough good diet, etc., and all. There's no second thoughts for it, that we are all, if I talk of integrative health as well, we are made of five elements, and we need to balance those five elements. If I talk of Ayurveda, we talk of three doshas. We need to, kaph, vat, and pit, we need to balance those. everything from the perspective of diet, rest, regeneration, exercise should be perfectly right, and the most important thing is talk it out. The most thing, people or women in particular shy out of going to a person or to a doctor for such symptoms where the person is not too sure, is this coming from menopause or what really is happening, etc. The moment you are able to articulate what is going on within the brain, you're able to put forth the points, automatically your body also understands that this is the time to recalibrate, to reshift, etc. So I think it's more of a mindset. So we don't need a menopause mindset. We really need a wisdom mindset that yes, let's celebrate the womanhood and the wisdomhood.
Yeah, thank you. That's so beautifully said. Because, a lot of my clients that I talk to, they go, "Oh, why all this is happening to me?" It's like, okay, think of this as a time where you're reflecting on yourself, putting that flashlight back on you, shining. Because from this, I have learned, okay, I need to pump up my muscles, build that, muscle strength and the bone strength. I am much stronger now compared to a
Mhm.
few years ago. So that's a celebration for me. Um,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
that, focus on ourselves, because this is a time where, so many different things are going on. Adult children, and generations and all that. So taking that little time for yourself and focusing on, that's not selfish at all, taking care,
No,
because if you
absolutely.
take
Yeah.
care of yourself, then only we can give back to others.
Absolutely. And I feel that women are pivotal when it comes to building a family, building a society, building a nation. So at that point in time, it's a transition. It is not a menopause sentence. It is not like, oh, now I am getting into something where, I have to suffer. No. If you reframe, if you recalibrate, you reshift your mindset into and preparing your body into the reserve of the estrogen that you have. Now, when I give a command to my body saying I have a very low estrogen and this is what is going to happen and all, the body definitely will give up producing whatever the little estrogen capacity, etc., is there. So, we're always important to be positive. Now, people who have surgical menopause, where suddenly there is a sharp drop in the estrogen, yes, I do understand that that is also what you need to be caring about, because people do have a lot of fibroids and they do have certain early tumors, certain cancers, etc., where the hysterectomy or removal of uterus is required. But that is the time when you be even more cautious, so even more positive of a frame and a mindset that you need, because now you have to rewire your brain preparing for a shock, right, of a estrogen
Mm.
shock. So all this is possible. Lots of berries, lots of fresh fruits, lots of Mediterranean diet, lots of figs, lots of dry fruits, lots of nuts, flax seeds. All these are the good sources of phytoestrogen, soya. So you sort of, slowly get your diet also diverse, and sort of, we can say maybe a diverse menopause diet, DMD or something. Start to integrate it in your routine. Anything that you build into the routine sort of becomes fundamentally important in rewiring the self or reconditioning the body. It's never a one off thing. Oh, let me do it for 10 days and then it's going to fix myself for good. A lot of women also don't consider multivitamins, and I'm a huge fan of it, because we don't get enough antioxidants. Let's all be honest that our diets are not going to be perfect, and we do have a lot of stressors from various aspects, and our body is continuously trying to fight for it. So having a good antioxidant, good multivitamin, not necessarily, you go ahead and chop everything under the sun moon. I had a patient, she brought in bags and bags of it, and then she put the entire thing. I said, oh my god, now where do I start from? Because I need to go ahead and read everything, the bacopa and then the moringa and ashwagandha, and she had an entire list. And then I think, where do you have time to eat your food? Because everything is scheduled with your supplements, so we don't need to be completely I would say irrational about it. Your body has a mechanism to produce all of this, provided certain elements, which anyways you will not get it, that is what you are providing. Now, a very simple thing such as boron, boron is one of a very interesting element which is helpful in this estrogen processing part of it. Now, It's a metal. You never get it or never think of having it. Zinc, selenium, small little minerals, all these are micronutrients which are important for the functioning of your hormonal system and axis. So it's important. And any kind of stress, may it be just an emotional stress, because obviously when the hormones are not working right, there'll be mood fluctuations, there can be executive function delay, there can be anger, irritability, and all this is also adding stress because you cannot perform, you cannot do your job well. So now this builds this vicious cycle as well. So doing anti-stress tasks such as meditation, breathing practices, walking, all this is extremely important. In our lab, I was myself a little shocked and stunned when I first was studying this pranayam called Brahmri. It's a humming bee technique. You just take in deep breath and then you just hum like a little bee, humming bee, like that. When I hooked my brain up and we were looking into the thing, suddenly there was a burst of gamma. Gamma is like a super brain wave. And that started to kick in. Every time the humming would go, the burst would come. Humming would go and the burst would come. Now, gamma is like a repair slash all in one function kind of a brain wave. It is the fastest brain wave. And if you have that fastest brain wave in your prefrontal cortex, which is the major target in menopause, your problem is sorted, because that is where the function gets preserved now. So, your executive function, your verbal memory, the biggest problem that women say, oh, I cannot forget the name, because that is how the function of that part of the brain gets atrophied. And then suddenly, you start doing this simple 3 or 4 times a day. It's cheap, it's inexpensive, you can do it at any point in time, and you start to see the change in life. Chanting of a universal frequency such as Om, very, very easy, nothing at all, it's not difficult. Sitting with eyes closed for only 10 minutes. I keep asking people across the globe when I take these sessions, I said, do a audit in your entire day. How many minutes do you sit with eyes closed? And the answer sometimes is nil, none. They say, we go to sleep with eyes closed. I said, that is sleep because that is delta. That is just before sleeping is theta, but that is not alpha. The moment you close your eyes, there is a slow wave called alpha. And that is important for repair, for relaxation, for calmness, for joy, for bliss. So we are actually depleting ourselves from these simple, simple, simple routines, allowing us to modulate these brain functions. So very important to also have certain routine of this kind, which is a repair routine, a regeneration routine.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, earlier, with the food, you have mentioned primarily plant predominant, having a variety of that, and wherever you cannot get natural foods, going for supplementation, and then practices of, like just sitting quietly and observing your inner self, and thoughts. Yeah, thoughts, we cannot stop that, but just focusing within ourselves, taking that time for oneself, and then different pranayam practices. You suggested Brahmari like 2 to 3 times a day. Any other pranayam you would suggest on a
So
regular basis?
every single pranayam has something very unique in the brain to do. For example, now 4, 7, 8. You take in 4, you hold 7, and then you exhale 8. Now this is a 4, 7, 8, a breath work technique. But if we talk it in the terms of the vagus nerve, anything where you inhale for 1 and then you exhale for 2 as a proportion, 1 in and 2 out, you're kicking the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It is for rest and digest. It is something which repairs, which regenerates. So all each of the breathing technique, each of the pranayam is meant to do something unique. For example, now 4, 7, 8 is meant to kick the vagus nerve. When you do anulom vilom, which is you inhale from one and exhale from the other nostril, you inhale from one nostril, you exhale from the other, you're balancing the right and the left brains. So every single pranayam has something very unique to offer. Now, it is also very important, as you rightly mentioned, that we understand scientifically, saying, why do I need to spend 5 minutes sitting just, just observing my thoughts? Because if you do not allow it to repair, you do not allow these modulation to happen, it will keep on declining. The atrophy is going to continue to happen. So it's important to scientifically understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, as we are doing different practices, so from our conversation all along, it also helps with women because nowadays quite a few of them are, you know, in workforce, right? This is the time around this age where you are at peak performing at your work and you have all these symptoms that pop in, and you have children, adult children to take care of, and then senior parents to take care of. How can they focus and continue being, in the workforce? Because quite a few of them, the clients that I speak to, they have to take time off from work because they're not able to manage all of
Wow.
that, keeping that brain sharp. Again, that prefrontal cortex.
Prefrontal cortex, yes.
How do we, keep focused and keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. See, I think the one practice which I did not mention, and if you want to really know this, let the secret out, let the world understand, I think that is gratitude. So, myself and one of my co authors, Monica Single, we are coming out with a very interesting book called Gift Gratitude Ignites Fulfillment and Transformation. Gratitude is that one password, one thing which you can unlock the issues that you just spoke about, right? So when you know that you're going to be hitting a particular age and you expect the menopausal changes, you start being thankful to your ovaries for producing the estrogen. Have you ever thanked your eyes until this date? Have you ever said to your heart, hey, thank you so much for beating, heart, if two seconds the heart stops beating, you need to call an ambulance, the CPR guys will come running. So we never thank for the functionings which is happening in the body, the brain, the mind. So gratitude is seemingly completely silly looking practice, right? You just say, oh, do I need to just say thank you to a muscle? Yes. The moment you start doing that, you start to rewire and repair. We did one trial, and which is under review right now as we speak. So we had 15 participants, volunteers, where we collected something called as the blood age. So we did all the extensive parameters in the blood, and then we calculated their it is a multi-omics platform which allows us to calculate age from these blood parameters. And then we also collected their genetic age, so we sent to us some of the samples, and both the ages were compared pre and post after 21 days of dedicated gratitude practice, and all they had to do was 20 minutes of just expressing gratitude to every single organ of the body. That's it, So you thank your kidneys and then your liver and then what, irrespective. I may have a thyroid, I may not have a thyroid. And then the second group was given the actual gratitude for all the unseen things. So, for example, my lab wants to reach to 10 million souls. I want their happiness, I want them to be out of suffering. It's unseen because I haven't reached to so many people. So I just thank those unseen things, and then the thank the seen things. And both the groups were followed up, and again the sample was recollected. We saw the difference in the blood age to be 3.5 years younger in their biological age after 21 days. So from
Wow.
the chronological age to the biological age, there was a gap of 3.5 years, which was found. Now, this is mind blowing. If this can happen in 21 days, you know what can happen. And if your chronologically your brain is expanding, and if your biological brain is actually shrinking, well, you got the job done, right? The same thing for your ovary, the same thing for your uterus, whatever be it. There's a guy called Mingyur, which is quite popular if you type him in the internet. He's a Buddhist monk, and I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, one of the top universities in US was studying their brain to see what is happening, because he had thousands of hours of meditation. All he did was a couple of hours of meditation every single day. His chronological brain, when it was 50, 50, which would be otherwise 50 depending on his age, his brain's age was 40. So every decade he was actually saving that 10 years of his brain life, and only simply by meditation. So if we are able to come back to these simple practices, come back to get the formula right for all the good old days when our, ancient wisdom practices were very rampant, when we never had this modern day and age problem, I think we will all be again healthy, happy, wise. And it really does not apply only to women, it applies to pretty much every single person who's listening to this podcast, right?
Wow, thank you. Wow, that is like, it's worth the investment, right? You have that
Yes.
return on your investment when you spend time with yourself, that meditation, gratitude practice, which I practice every day. At the end of the day, I write down in my gratitude journal, what am
Yeah,
I?
we call it the ROG, the people want return on investment. This is the return on gratitude, which is way, way, way beyond imagination. In fact, the preliminary data, when it came in, I was a little, I was like, how is this even possible? But this is the way in which every single frequency, every thought that you are actually producing is influencing all your cell. So your cell life, your life of every single process which is happening in the body is not under external control. Yes, it is influenced by the factors around it, but essentially it is inside out a process. So it is within you how to basically make it happen.
Yeah,
And
and
that's,
also another thing you have mentioned earlier with the gratitude, with another group where you were looking at how many souls am I going to touch and all.
yeah,
Um, about the brain not knowing the difference between real or perceived because
visualize.
things do not happen. You can think what you have just said earlier, you can think that it already happened and it will
Absolutely.
manifest, it will happen later down the road.
It will happen. One of our courses, Neuro Manifestation, is quite popular. I don't know if you've gone through it, but that is exactly the thing, that there were two groups. One was a physical playing piano group, and then one was a mentally practicing piano group. And both of their brains were studied for 3 months. Both of them had the similar changes in the brain. The one who was also mentally rehearsing. So for the brain, it really does not matter. And that's why I joke and I say I do all my exercises mentally. I don't need to do it physically, but no, that's obviously for my joint and the ligaments. But yes, mental stimulation, mental visualization has a lot of power. So if every single woman says, oh, let me just visualize my ovaries to have still, despite its chronological decay, I am not going to allow it to decay, but keep on pumping it mentally to keep producing these estrogen and then have the prefrontal cortex stimulated. I don't see the reason why majority of women will not be able to do it. The only problem comes is doubt, right? Disbelief. How is this even possible, right? When we are showing these things in the lab, it is like right there. You can see it. You don't have to really actually go ahead, and once you experience it, it's yours.
Yeah, I know. Next month I'm going on a trip to Mount Kailas, and every day I visualize I'm already there. And last night my
Wow.
husband was saying that, what if? I said, I don't want to hear what if. I'm already there.
Absolutely.
My mindset is already there. So I don't want to think
Amazing.
about alternatives.
Super, super. Wow, it's just spectacular. I've never been there, but all the best. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward for that. So closing out, I just wanted to ask you if you can share an example where spirituality played a pivotal role in someone's cognitive and emotional healing journey.
Well, I am that sample. In fact, the Limitless Brain Lab started with my own brain and my own need. So my life has been a very interesting journey. And again, gratitude to good Lord for it. So intellectually, everything was going very well in my life. Yes, all the gold medals and all the top places that I could work for, work with, and United Nations and Cambridge, and so many things amazing in my life intellectually. But emotionally, I actually failed. I had a very, very deep and dear friend of mine, 25 years of long relationship, and she and me literally grew up together. And one fine day she exits my life, the relationship breaks, and emotionally it was very traumatic for me. I just couldn't take it, for months long, for a couple of years long. The rumination was just so profound. I just could not leave those ideas and thoughts now. Very, very painful. My parents actually, there was a little board in my house that we cannot discuss this topic, because I was constantly reiterating the same thing because of the pain, right? And then, at a certain point in time, I when I looked at my functional MRI, now obviously it's a lot expensive affair to do that, but just wanted to, serendipitously, I was just going in one of the conferences, and they were studying a breakup, romantic breakup. I just told the professor, why don't you do my brain scan, because I had a childhood friendship breakup. And then when I looked at that functional MRI, and when I looked at this odd area called ventral tegmental area, which was lighting, shining bright, which means there's something wrong happening there, which generally happens wrong with heroin addicts, cocaine addicts. And that was like a eye opener for me, like a shocker, saying that, oh my God, my emotional addiction is to such an extent that it has rewired my systems, it has rewired my brain, and that's why I'm not able to come out of it. So I took it a point, I told the professor that, look, a few years down the line, I'm going to come back and this is not going to be there. So then I started to serially monitor my own electroencephalogram, started to do a QEEG, started to see everything that helps my prefrontal cortex brain to develop. And as I was inviting these peak performers, because I said, let's learn from people, right? You learn from book, definitely, but you learn from people much more than what a book can give. So people are the real the emotional modulation, and then that connection, right, the heart to heart that comes in, and the experiences that the shaping that has happened into their lives. So as I started to interview all these amazing brains, some people who had pinnacle of resilience in their life, some athletes, some people, some leaders, some thought changes, some people who really fundamentally shifted certain fields. When I started to talk to them, I realized, oh my God, they're not doing anything exceptional. They don't have an access to more than 24 hours. They don't have access to a super brain, or they don't have an access to a lot of resources. All that they are doing is some certain daily practices, which is rewiring their emotional system of the brain and then the prefrontal cortex. So that is from which the entire lesson of movers was born. So movers is like an everyday practice, 5 minutes each of the component for 25 minutes, which rewires the brain. So meditation, oxygenation, visualization, exercise, reading something positive or something which is affirmative, or chanting, and ascribing, where you just remove what is not serving you. So when I started to do these practices, over a period of time, my emotional system started to cool off. The entire prefrontal cortex is the executive function, which I was not able to see clearly, right? Fog, what we say, brain fog. And menopause also has one of the problems of brain fog, confusion, memory issues, cannot think straight, wrong decisions, incorrect prediction of what will go wrong, problem solving, etc. So the same thing was happening in my life. And everything just sort of, suddenly everything started to appear. It's like, when you enter a dark room and suddenly there's a light which is there, and you switch on and you see everything which is in the room. So the same thing happened for me. And as I continued those practices, the mathematical formula of this brain's function started to appear. So we took all those studies and we built our own algorithms, where we, for example, if you come down to our lab, all we do is we just get your 24 or 25 channel EEG, electroencephalogram, and then we run through our algorithms and give you an exact indicator of your executive functions, your cognition, your mood, memory, your balance of both sides of the brain, cognitive flexibility, your ability to repair, regenerate, anterior and posterior communication, coherence, how the brain is talking to each other. Every single parameter can actually be learned. And the most important and interesting thing is what customized solutions, personalized music, meditation, diet, exercises, yoga, any kind of thing which applies to this type of the brain. Because when we do these models of prediction and AI, it's just fantastic how it helps us to plan, to predict, and most important, if you stick to it, you sort of reshift and rewire.
Wow. Yes, I signed up for that. I'm on my way there. Um, you
Lovely,
have
yes. So
in
the
the
moment the moment I was the sample, I was the guinea pig. I was the person, responsible for my own brain's sabotage and my own brain's mastery. So that is when you start learning the formula, right? And when we got the formula that, look, this is so easy. Why should anybody suffer?
yeah.
The moment you understand how your brain is operating and how your mind, you are controlling your mind and not the mind controlling you. See, menopause is going also, if we talk back to menopause and women and all, it's an automatic process. The moment we allow it to be autopilot or automatic, all the problems that we just spoke about is going to come. But the moment you take the control in your hand, the moment you take that celebration within, and you reframe, you reshift, you rewire, you rechange, the entire thing, the game, the menopause game can be won forever. One for good and one forever.
Yeah, that's right. That's the key is taking control. You don't want to give your
Mhm.
remote control away. You want to hold on and be able to control. Hey, thank you so much for your time spent here and for all the wonderful tips that you have shared and your knowledge. And Thank you. We are blessed with all the wisdom that you have shared here with us.
Thank you. Thank you to every single person listening to us on this podcast. Thank you, Rajita. I think this is a great initiative. I always ask people, what is the meaning of the word doctor? And people do land up saying, do you know what is the meaning of the word doctor?
No, if you can share that with
They'll
us.
end up saying treating or healing. The meaning of the word doctor is to dossier, which means to teach. So essentially, as doctors, my job is to bring out these educational facts where you take the control of your life, you choose what is happening with your life, and not under the control of anybody else. So thank you so much for having me here on this show.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate you.